Welcome back guys to a new Moralis Blueprints video in which we're gonna clone the Aptos Explorer. You can see it on my screen. This is the clone itself and this is the actual website, and look how similar this looks compared to ours. So on the real Aptos Explorer, when you click into one transaction, you can get some data about it. You can see the version, the status, the sender, which function, the amount. And inside our clone, when you go to a transaction, you can see the same data. You have the version, status, you have sender, function, and the amount. And we're gonna build this using Nextjs. We're gonna use TailwindCSS because you guys have requested it so much. And we're also gonna use the Moralis Web3 API to get all the data. I hope you are excited for this. Stay tuned and I will show you how to build it. Hey, I'm Joseph, your Web3 instructor from Sweden. I've been into crypto since 2017 and have been building in the space since 2021. In my free time, I enjoy playing paddle, going to the gym, or hanging out with my dog. I always try to enjoy some good pancakes, but that's for another time. Now let's get back to the video. Alright, welcome back. I have created a starter repo for you guys, which is the exact same one I'm using right here. So we will have the same starting point, and if you clone that repo, you can just tag along. It is the Aptos Explorer Clone repo I'm talking about, and it is fully prepared with the front end being a Nextjs application, and I have already installed TailwindCSS, and the backend I have installed a few dependencies. I've added the start script as well. Then we have the .env file, and this is where we want to add our API key. So let's get started from this point, and we need to get the API key by logging into our Moralis account. Now if you don't have one already, you can go to moralis.io, go to pricing, and from here you can see the different plans that we have. So we have the starter plan, which is for free, but it gives you some limitations in terms of daily compute units, the speed, how many requests you can do. So I definitely recommend you to go with the pro plan, because some of the content we're putting out, some of the things we are creating in this channel demand you to have the pro plan. So if you're serious about building within the Web3 space, go ahead and sign up for the pro plan. And once you've done that, log into your admin dashboard and copy your API key from the Web3 APIs tab and add it inside this app right here. Perfect. Next up, we want to create an index.js file in the backend folder, and in here we want to import the dependencies we installed. So we need to have node fetch, we want to have express, we can import course, and also .env. Then let's initialize our app using Express, and then we also need to specify the port number for our application. I'm gonna set it on port 5001. We can add .env.config like so, and then app use. We want to add our API key from the .env file, so we can use this line right here. This is the same variable name we added right here in this file, and this is how we want to store it in the index.js file. Then we're gonna want to create an object called options and include this variable right here. So it's gonna have a method and headers, and within headers we're gonna add the API key like this. And at the bottom we can do app.listen and have it on our port, and we're gonna do a callback function just to console log that we are actually listening to our server. Our backend server is only going to have one single endpoint, and it's gonna be on /get transactions. So I'm gonna paste this in. So we do an app.get, and then we add the endpoint we want to have this request on, and it's gonna be asynchronous, and within this request we're gonna have try catch method. So we're gonna try to do this fetching request right here to this endpoint that Moralis provides us, and we're gonna have options as a second parameter, which is the API key right here. And then once we get the response back, if it's successful, we're gonna send status 200 along with the response back to our frontend client. But if something goes wrong, we're gonna catch it right here, and we're just gonna console log it for now. But we're also gonna send back the status of 400, so the front-end client knows that something went wrong. And this is it for the backend server, guys. We don't need more than this. We don't need to have multiple endpoints to get all the data that we need. Only one single endpoint can get us the data we need to build this Aptos Explorer. That's pretty cool in my opinion. So let's close this one down and go ahead with the front end. Before we jump into the front end client, I just want to give you a heads up that if you're not using the starter repo that I'm sharing with you right here, you might get errors that we don't get in this video. And that's probably because you're using different versions of these libraries right here. And that will give you new errors because of breaking changes, new updates that didn't exist when I created this video. And if you do so, make sure you post that error in our Moralis forum, or you can also downgrade and use these exact versions I'm using right here and just continue with the video. But just have in mind that you might get different errors that we're not getting in this video if you are creating this from scratch. Okay, so let's start with this app.js file, and you can see it's a bit different. We're importing the global CSS file, we're importing use state, and we're also have created this transaction context that we are importing. And even though I have prepared this app with TailwindCSS and some other libraries that we need, and this file as well, I haven't added this transaction context yet. And it's gonna be within a new folder called components. So let's go on and do that first. So let's create this folder called components, and within that one, let's add this file called transaction context.js. And it's gonna be a short file. It's gonna contain 3 rows of code. So we're gonna import create context from React. We're gonna declare this variable transaction context from create context, and then we're gonna export this transaction context like so. And this is all we need for this file. We can actually close this down. So what is happening inside this file? Well, we are creating some state variables, their values right here, and their set functions, because we want to pass along all these variables to the whole application. So we need to wrap the app with this transaction context element dot provider. And we're gonna pass along this value, which are the values of the state variables along with their set functions. So what happens is that wherever we are inside our app, we can call these set functions and change the value of the respective state variables. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna show you how to do that. But we can go on and check the index.js file, which I've cleaned up a little bit. I've added some styling to it right here. So we have a font family, the font mono. We've added minimum height to the whole page, and then we've added some background color. What's missing inside this file is 2 components that we want to render, but we haven't created those yet. So let's go on and create the first one, which is header.js, and start by importing image because we want to display the Aptos logo. And I've already created this assets folder that includes the Aptos logo, which you have it as well. So let's import this Aptos logo from that folder. Like so, and then create our export default function and return a section. Now, if you haven't used Tailwind CSS before, in my opinion, it's very handy and makes things very easy for you. So instead of having all the CSS in one or different CSS files and import them to the correct pages and components, you can add the styling right here. So Tailwind gives you predefined width, heights, and other values that you can use. And you will probably see that throughout this application and get a better feeling of it if you haven't used that before. But also have in mind that they have really good documentation that you can go to and check what each and every value really means. So let's add another section, and we're gonna add full width, full height. We're gonna add flex. We're gonna add space between. We're gonna center the items, and we're gonna add some padding on the X axle. So the drop down menu or the drop down data I'm getting, for example, if I do like this, is because I'm using this extension, the TailwindCSS by Tailwind Labs, which I highly recommend you to use. It makes things so much easier when you can see the values showing and you can choose from there instead. Now let's add the image element and want to render this Aptos logo. Let's add some alt text to it. This is the way of adding colors to the text. In this case, this is predefined, but you can also do it this way if you want to specify the hex number to a specific one. But you can also do this, which is predefined by Tailwind itself. And that's all we need for our header. Now we just want to import it right here so we can display it. And there we have it. We have the logo right here. We have the tab menu right here as well. And in order for you to get your application going, you need to have two terminals or two tabs open in your terminal, one in the backend folder and one in the frontend folder. For the backend, type npm run start, because that is the start script we've added right here. And then for the frontend, you type npm run dev, and it will spin up your application and you will see this right here. Next up, we're gonna create our main component. Let's minimize this and create it right here. So main.js, and we can actually import it already. And hit save. Now you might get errors because we haven't defined anything that's exported from this file yet, but we're just preparing our index.js page. So we can close this one down actually. So let's go on and import a few things. So we're gonna have React. We're gonna have use context, we're gonna have use effect, and also use state. We're gonna import image, we're gonna import link, we're gonna import the transaction context we created. Gonna be a capital T right there. Let's also add Axios up here. And lastly, we're gonna import this search icon from Web3 UI kit icons, like so. And we're also gonna need the Aptos logo once again. Before we add all the logic and before we import or use context, use effect, use state, I want to see that we can render this correctly. So let's add a section right here with class name, full width, I'm gonna add padding top 16 and px 32. And let's see if we get this inside our app, and there we have it. Perfect. So we know this works and it is in sync. So let's go on and continue. Let's create a new paragraph. We're gonna have text right. So this is text align right. We're gonna have margin top 10. We can hard code this to, let's say, this, and there we have it on the right hand side. Perfect. Let's go on and add another section, give it a class name with flex, justify between, and then we're also gonna add margin top 4. Close this one, and then another section within this one. And there we have the first box as well. We're gonna have a few more, I think it's 4 in total, but we're gonna add next to each other. So I will just copy this one step down and gonna change this text right here. I'm gonna paste the last 2 in, so it's gonna be basically the same. So only one of them is gonna be different. This one, you can see it has more values than the other 3. So it's gonna be a little bit different, but I'm gonna paste that in and then go through it like so. So this is the last one, okay? So this is exactly the same, we're just changing the text. But this one right here is a little bit different. So it contains more sections, and instead of adding justify between, we're adding justify evenly, and then we're adding more sections just to have these two within the same one that you can see right here, and we're adding more text to it. So we have real time 7, and then peak last 30 days, so it's 458. So if I hit save and go back, we can see how it looks, and this is pretty clean. It looks basically the same as the real one, so we are happy with this one. And we're gonna continue and adding the search bar down below these 4 boxes, as you can see right here. And it's gonna be down here, so let's add a new section with class name. I'm gonna paste this in, but go through it one by one so you can understand what it is. So we have full width, we have height of 16, it's gonna be flex, item center, we have background color, and also border and hover border colors. We have margin top. We're adding the border with this keyword right here, and then we're adding rounded corners. So this is radius, basically. We're adding XL, extra large, for the rounded corners. And then within this section, we're gonna need to render this search icon we imported earlier. We're gonna add the size to 30 pixels. Let's add width 14 as some styling as well. This is gonna be a self-closing one like so, and then we need to have an input with type text. So we're adding some color right here to the placeholder as well. And then some of the other values I think you recognize by now. And that's everything we need for the search function. So let's go back, and there we have it. We have some nice padding when we hover above the search field. We have the placeholder right here that disappears once we start typing, and when we remove it comes back. So this is pretty nice. You have the rounded corners, very beautiful. And let's go on with the next steps, which should be this whole table right here. Now to get this to display the data, we need to do Axios request to our backend server and get the data from the Moralis API. So let's go on and build this whole table right here, along with the button and the footer. We're gonna add a section that's gonna contain the h3 title. So it's gonna have some styling, and we're gonna add some margin top. And within this one, let's add the h3 and some styling to that as well. So we just want this to be text XL. And the title is user transactions, like so. And it's this title right here that we're adding, which you can see in our application as well. Next, let's have another section with no styling, and then we're gonna add the table, and that is going to have some styling. It's gonna be full width. It's gonna have border separate and border spacing 2, like this. So these are the titles for the table, and you saw that we added some styling to these last two, and it's because we want to have some spacing right here, and then this should be on the far right corner, and you can see the same right here inside the Aptos Explorer. And below the table head, we need to have the table body. And within this table body, the data within that is not gonna render until we get the data from the backend server. So let's go on and set that up, because we haven't done that yet. So we're gonna need some state variables. We're gonna need result. And it's gonna be an empty array to start with. Then we need const show result. And it's gonna be set to false. And then we're gonna get all the context variables that we added inside this app.js. So we need to have, and we only want to have the set functions. We don't want to have the value itself, because we aren't gonna display those values within this component. So let's get all of these set functions. And this is gonna be taken from use context and then the transaction context, like this. And this depends. We named this transaction context. You might have named it something else, so make sure you use what you have named it right here. So we're gonna do a request to our backend server. So it's on localhost :5001 and then /get transactions, because that's the endpoint we added inside our backend server. So we're gonna set the result variable through the response.data, and then we're also gonna set show result to true. Then we need to call this get transactions function on render for this page. So we're gonna add this as well. And lastly, we want to have another function that we're gonna call when we click on the specific transaction. So this is gonna be called const set transaction context. It's gonna take a few parameters. So it's gonna take hash, version, transaction status, sender, transaction function, and amount. And these are the values we want to update the state variables with. So let's just go on and add each and every one to the correct set function. Like this, and then we can go down to the table body. So we're going to do show result. So when result is true, we want to render a few things. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is let me do like so. So we want to map through the result array, and we want to check if transaction.events is true and transaction.events, the first index, has a type. Then we want to return a table row. So this is going to happen for each and every item within this array, and we want to give it some styling. We want to give it a key, and we also want to give it this onClick function that we just created, the set transaction context, and it's gonna take a few parameters, which are the one we added right here. So let's add those like this. So it's gonna be the transaction.hash, gonna be the transaction version, like this. So we have the hash, we have the version, the success boolean, the account address, we have the type, and we split it and slicing it and then joining it again just to format it the way we want to, and then we're getting the amount. We make it a number, and then we give it 4 decimals right here. Let's move on and add each and every table data for this row. So they're gonna have some styling, and it's gonna be different depending on what data we want to display. Second one is gonna include this SVG, and if we go back, we can see that it's this one. we're gonna include. And we can already see the table rows getting into places, which is very nice. So for every table data we update, we can see this grow and add more data. So this is very nice, to be honest. And you can see that we can already see that this is a link, and at the bottom left you can see the URL that we are creating. For the third one, we want to add the timestamp. So let's create another table data, and it's gonna have new date. It's gonna take the timestamp as a parameter, and we're gonna format it this way and make it to local string. Now use your own preferences here. I'm in Sweden, so I'm gonna use this because it makes things easier for me. And then we're gonna split it like so and take the 0 index. Let's go back, and there we have the date. So next up is the sender. And there we have the address with some nice background color and the rounded corners. So what we do here is we check if this has a 0 index, and if we have this account address, then we want to display this. Otherwise, we will keep this field empty. And we're adding some styling to it as well right here. And also some formatting, because we don't want to display the whole address. We just want to display between these selected indexes. And here is the same. So if we don't have anything in this field, we're gonna display an empty string basically, which you can see right here. So you can see this has different background color, and because this looks like this, it's because we've added some transparent values right here, and that's why this looks like this and not a regular hex value. This is gonna be the last table data. We're gonna give it some styling right here. It's gonna be flex call. We're gonna add p2 and text right like this. And there we have the last field. So if we don't have any value, we're just gonna display 0 Aptos. But if we have a value, we're gonna format it like this and add 4 decimals to it. Now this field, this table data actually has 2 values. It also has the gas value down here at the bottom. So we're gonna add that as well, and we're gonna do it inside the same table data. So we're gonna add another span element right here and give it some styling. I'm gonna make the text smaller. And there we have it right there. We have 8 decimals, and we change the color a little bit to make it look exactly like it's here. And that's it for our table. We can see we get all the data right here. Now we want to add the button and the footer as well. But up until now, you can see how quickly we can get the data and display it. And we're also using TailwindCSS, which you guys have requested so much in the comment sections. So I hope you appreciate that. If you do, smash the like button, and let's continue with creating this app. So we're gonna add it down here. It's gonna be a new section, and we're gonna give it some styling as well. It's gonna have text center, and then MY, it's gonna be 10 like this. And with this one, let's create a button and also give this some styling. Width is gonna be 80, height is gonna be 14, text black, then some background color, and some rounded corners like this. And this is what we got. And lastly, we have the footer. So it's gonna contain the logo and also the social media icons. So let's start by creating another section here. And then I'm gonna paste this in because it's a bunch of SVG files which are the social media icons. So let me just minimize them so you can clearly see what I'm talking about. right here. So another one. There we have it. So these are the SVGs, and this is the section we just created below this one. This is also what I pasted in. If I hit save and go back to Chrome, we can see that below this button we just added this section right here, and these are the SVGs I'm talking about. We can close this because we're done inside the main.js. So the next thing what we want to do is, if you remember, we set up these versions as links, and you can see it on the bottom left corner. So if I click this one, we want to set up this link, but have in mind that we don't want to hard code this because this table is gonna contain different data. So if you can see for this specific row, this version ends with 875. So if I click this, we can see 875 right here. But if we go back and let's say if I take another one, so 003, so we have 003 right here. So this is gonna be a dynamic route, and we're gonna set that up by going to the pages folder, and we're gonna create a new folder and call it transaction like so. And then we're gonna add a new file, but we're gonna add square brackets, add ID within there, and then .js like so. So in here we can import head from next/head. Then we're gonna import the header, which is the component we created earlier. So it's gonna be from components header.js, and then we're gonna import another component that we haven't created yet, but that's the one we're gonna create very, very soon. So it's gonna be called transaction like so and transaction like so. Then we can have our export default function and call it, we can actually call it home. I don't think that really matters, to be honest. Then add the return statement, which is gonna be a section with some styling. Let's add the same styling as we had in the index.js page. So background, it's gonna be like this, and it's gonna be 131615. Close this section, then we can add the head element. Add the header and also the transaction component like so. Hit save, and now let's go on and create this transaction component, which is actually going to be our last component. So let's create a new file called transaction.js. What we need in here is use context. We're gonna import link. We're gonna import some icons as well. Gonna need arrow left, check mark, like so, copy and search. And we're also gonna need the transaction context from the transaction context.js file. Like so, and let's make this with a capital T. So what we're doing right here on line 7 is that we import these values from the context that we created earlier in this app, and then we want to return a section with some styling again. It's gonna be full width, some padding top, and some padding on left and right. And what we created right now is, if we go into one of these, we created this arrow back. So we've added the icon, the text, and we linked it basically back to the root folder of our app. We can go on and create another section below this. And within this section, we're gonna add the search icon, give it a font size of 30 pixels, and styling, we're gonna give it width of 14. And we're also gonna add an input field. And this is very similar to what we created earlier, right? So it's the input field right here with the hover effect. We're gonna need a few more sections to display the data that we're getting for that specific transaction. So let's add a new section with margin top 12. Actually, it's gonna be 2 Excel like so. And then within this section, we're gonna add a span element, give it some styling of text SM, and we're gonna display the hash like this. And then below this, we're gonna have another icon. It's gonna be the copy icon, and it's gonna have the font size of 20 pixels like so, and some margin left. Let's go back, and this is what we have created right now. So this is actually the hash from that specific transaction, and it's not hard-coded. So this is pretty cool that we can get all this data using context throughout our app. Let's then add another section, and I'm gonna paste in the class styling like so, because it's basically the same. So we're using flex, we're using justify between, and we're using some text color, some border color, and rounded corners. And within this one, we're gonna have a few more sections. So I'm basically gonna paste this in and then go through both the data and the styling so you can understand what we're really doing. So if I hit save, and I can minimize all the SVGs first of all, as always, because it makes things easier. Like this. So this is what we added. We added this section right here with some styling, and then for each and every one of them, you can see they are the same basically. They include an SVG and the title. And if we go back, this is what we have added. So these three are the same in terms of styling, and this one is a little bit different because that's the selected one. So that's what we have added right here. And the next step would be to add some data for the specific transaction, which is this section right here. I've noticed I missed one last section right here after payload, so I've just added it. It's the changes. And then let's go on and add another section down here and give it some styling once again. So we have added the version right here and then the status. And for this status, we check if this is true, we're gonna display success. Otherwise, it's gonna be empty. Or we could do something like this instead if we want to. And if it's not, it's gonna be, let's say, unsuccessful, like so. So depending on if this is true or not, it's gonna display success or unsuccessful. So right here we're adding the sender's address, but we're slicing it so we don't have to display everything. And then we're also adding this SVG arrow right here. All right, I think it's coming along pretty good, to be honest. So we just have a few span elements left. So let's go on and create the next one and add some styling to it. We're gonna add some background color. Some text color, some padding. We're gonna add text center and then once again some rounded corners like this. And the data for this is gonna be the transaction function. So if I save, we can see what kind of function this transaction is. Let's go back, let's add another span element and add the amount with apt. Hit save, go back. And there we have it. So if it doesn't include a number, it's gonna show not a number. If we go back and if we take a transaction that has an amount, like this one, then we can see that amount right there. And guys, this is it for our application. I mean, we're using Nextjs, we're using TailwindCSS, we're using Moralis, we're using some beautiful icons, and we can very quickly and very easy create an Aptos Explorer clone that, in my opinion, is very impressive to create in such a short time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you sign up for the Moralis Pro account to take your dapps to the next level. Make sure you hit the like button. Let me know in the comment section below how much you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.